A child in southern Lebanon woke up on the morning of April 8, 2026, thinking the war was over. By noon, she was under rubble, and the man who ordered the strike that buried her, he's currently being protected by the most powerful military in the world. This is the story the news cycle is burying. And if you don't understand what happened in the last 72 hours, you will not understand what is about to happen to your gas prices, your food bills, and the global financial system that holds your savings together. Stay with me, because what I am about to tell you changes everything. This is Daily Brief. If you are not subscribed, hit that button right now. This story is moving faster than any newsroom can track, and you cannot afford to miss the next chapter. Let's start where every other outlet is afraid to start, with the precise moment of betrayal. On April 8th, 2026, while a ceasefire was supposed to be holding across Lebanon, while families in Sidon and Tyre had begun, just barely, to believe the worst was behind them, the Israeli military launched what it named, with a coldness that should stop you cold, Operation Eternal Darkness. That is not a name chosen carelessly. Eternal Darkness. Think about what that communicates. Not defense, not retaliation. A declaration that the other side will never see light again. In under 10 minutes, Israeli forces struck more than 150 locations simultaneously across Beirut, the Bekaa Valley, the South Coast, Tyre, Sidon, in 10 minutes. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights confirmed at least 303 people killed and more than 2,500 wounded in that opening strike alone. Lebanese government data, cited in the same UN report, puts the broader toll since early March at over 2,000 killed and nearly 6,600 injured. Behind each of those numbers is a name, a face. Oh, a kitchen someone will never walk into again. But here is what turned a massacre into something that international humanitarian law experts are now describing as a war crime in its most documented form. The double tap. Israel bombed a target. Then, when paramedics, neighbors, and volunteers ran toward the wreckage, because that is what humans do, we run toward pain, not away from it. Israel struck the same location a second time. The rescuers became the target. The people trying to pull survivors from rubble were eliminated so there would be fewer survivors to tell the story. A UN expert statement published April 15th explicitly condemned these strikes as violations of the principles of distinction and proportionality under customary international humanitarian law. That is the formal language. The plain language is, those were war crimes. Documented, named, condemned in writing by the world's highest human rights body. Now here is the question that has been haunting every diplomat and analyst trying to understand how we got here. Was Lebanon even covered by the ceasefire? Because the answer to that question is not what you think. And when you see the four contradictory answers given by the four most powerful parties involved, you will understand exactly how this war was always designed to continue. I will show you those four answers in a moment. But first, the strike that changed the entire equation. Hezbollah did not stand down. And for those asking whether it had a right to respond, consider this. The Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project recorded 330 Israeli airstrikes and shelling incidents in Lebanon between November 27th and January 10th alone. That is 330 strikes during a ceasefire, before April 8th even happened. UNIFIL, the UN peacekeeping force stationed in southern Lebanon, documented more than 7,500 Israeli airspace violations since the November 2024 ceasefire came into force. French President Emmanuel Macron publicly called Israel's actions, in the words of CBS News, unacceptable and a violation of the ceasefire. The Norwegian Refugee Council issued formal condemnation. So when a Hezbollah drone crossed the northern Israeli sky after April 8th and footage showed smoke rising over a kibbutz near the border, what the world was watching was not an unprovoked attack. It was the inevitable consequence of a ceasefire that was never real. And that footage carried a message that shook the Israeli security establishment in a way few public statements reveal. The drone was precise. The technology has equalized. The side that believed itself untouchable is learning it is not. Reports, credible, multi-sourced, indicate that Netanyahu is not sleeping in a fixed location. He moves constantly. The man facing criminal proceedings in both Israeli domestic courts and the International Criminal Court is now living something close to the uncertainty he has delivered to so many others. Stay with me, because what comes next, the Strait of Hormuz, is the part of this story that directly affects your bank account, your grocery bill, and every market you have money in. Subscribe now so you never miss a briefing like this one. Now, back to the ceasefire question. Was Lebanon covered or not? Here is what we found when we traced every public statement from every relevant party. The U.S. Vice President said it may have been a translation misunderstanding. Netanyahu said Lebanon was never part of any agreement. Trump said he would review it, which in practice means he does not know. Pakistan, the primary mediating country, said Lebanon was absolutely included. 4 parties, 4 contradictory answers, 0 ambiguity about what that contradiction means. A ceasefire with 4 conflicting definitions is not a ceasefire. It is a diplomatic instrument, a pause dressed as peace, a photo opportunity for international media, a temporary signal to financial markets to calm down, and a ready-made excuse for every party to justify the next escalation. That is not diplomacy. That is architecture designed for continued war. And here is what that tells us about the real objective. Netanyahu does not want peace. Netanyahu wants territory. Every consistent pattern of behavior from this Israeli government, the continued airstrikes under ceasefire, the expansion into southern Lebanon, the rejection of every mediated framework, only becomes rational under one lens. The land itself is the goal. Every UN resolution, every French phone call, every humanitarian law framework passes through that calculation the way water passes through rock. Now let me tell you what is keeping Washington awake at night. Not the optics. Not the polls. The 50-kilometer strip of water that has taken the entire global economy hostage. What Iran did to the Strait of Hormuz was not simply a military blockade. It was something far more sophisticated, a selective, financially architected siege that is quietly rewriting the rules of global trade. And when I show you exactly how Iran is choosing who gets through and who doesn't, you will understand why this is not just a war. It is the most consequential economic restructuring in decades. That is coming in 2 minutes. First, the strike that started all of this. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, a coordinated air campaign targeting military and government installations inside Iran. According to CNBC, the strikes came 1 day after diplomatic talks in Geneva that officials described as showing good progress, and just hours after Oman's foreign minister had personally pleaded with Vice President Vance for more time to negotiate. The Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the strikes. Iran's response was not slow, not symbolic, not proportionate. It was immediate, massive, and multidimensional. As reported by the Associated Press and confirmed by Pentagon officials, Iran launched hundreds of retaliatory ballistic missiles and thousands of drones, striking at Israel, at U.S. military bases across the region, and at U.S. allied Gulf states from Bahrain to Kuwait to the UAE. And then came the decision that changed the global economy in a single day. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil supply moves through that 50-kilometer channel. The International Energy Agency described what followed as the greatest energy security challenge in modern history. By March 10th, Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, the largest shipping companies on Earth, had suspended all vessel transit. Gulf oil production dropped by 10 million barrels per day, according to data tracked by War Costs and corroborated by Bloomberg. The IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, laid sea mines in the strait. The U.S. Navy confirmed it is deploying underwater drones to locate and clear them. And a New York Times report citing U.S. officials revealed something that should stop every person reading this cold. Iran itself cannot locate all the mines it placed. The party that mined the world's most critical waterway has lost track of where some of those mines are. A fifth of the world's oil supply is moving through a channel where the miner cannot fully account for its own minefield. The economic fallout was immediate. Brent crude surged past $80 per barrel within 48 hours of the closure. At peak escalation, it reached $106, according to War Costs tracking. More than 19,000 flights were delayed globally. Over 1,500 flights were canceled in a single day across the Middle East. Gulf Cooperation Council states, which rely on the strait for over 80% of their food imports, saw grocery prices spike by as much as 120% in some cities within 2 weeks. Vietnam, India, South Korea, panic buying at petrol stations. Not because a war happened somewhere far away, because a maritime lane the size of a small river became impassable. If this is the first time you are hearing this level of detail, this is what Daily Brief does every single day. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. This story does not end here. Now here is what no financial analyst is connecting clearly enough. Iran was not simply blocking the strait, it was running it. According to multiple sourced reports, tankers flying flags from Russia, China, India, Japan, and South Korea were granted passage in exchange for payment on Iranian terms. Tankers flagged for American or American allied destinations? Blocked. This is not military pressure. This is financial architecture being rewritten in real time. Iran turned the world's most important waterway into a toll booth, and it chose its customers based on geopolitical allegiance. The countries paying Iran's toll are not Western allies. They are the countries building the alternative financial order that has been forming quietly for years. Which brings us to the subject that explains why Washington is more alarmed by Hormuz than by any missile launched this year. Since the early 1970s, a quiet agreement has underwritten the entire global financial system. Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, sell their oil in U.S. dollars. With those dollars, they buy U.S. Treasury bonds. This is not coincidence. It is the mechanism by which the dollar maintains its status as the world's reserve currency. Not through gold, not through military might alone, through oil, through a constant, reliable recycling of petrodollars back into American debt. Every tanker that cannot move through the strait is a transaction that does not happen in dollars. Every oil deal settled in yuan, in rubles, in any currency that is not the dollar is a transaction that does not return to buy a treasury bond. The effect is not visible on the front page. It is silent. It is cumulative. And it is eating at the foundational architecture of American financial power. A Cessin international analysis published weeks ago characterized Operation Epic Fury as the most damaging foreign policy endeavor in American history, specifically because of what it has done to the petrodollar mechanism. Not the missile strikes, not the military losses. The quiet, irreversible erosion of dollar dependency in global energy markets. Trump did not have this in his equation. What leaked accounts of the White House decision-making process reveal is that the decision to strike Iran was made in a room containing Marco Rubio, a senior Mossad advisor, and various political figures, but almost no career military officers, almost no one with operational experience in a theater of this complexity. Trump said publicly in the days following the initial strikes that this would be quick, that results would come in 24 hours. 24 hours. That is how catastrophically the adversary was underestimated. Trump believed he was walking into Venezuela at scale, a fast strike, a show of force, a victory photograph, and a compliant enemy that collapses at the first hard blow. He failed to understand or refused to understand that Iran is not Venezuela. The Iranian political system, however authoritarian, has ideological, religious, and identity roots that make it resistant to external pressure in ways that no Western strategic model has ever accurately calculated. The IRGC is not a conventional army. It is a decentralized structure with operational cells across multiple countries, capable of continuing to function and strike even under maximum pressure. And controlling the Strait of Hormuz gives Iran a lever over the global economy that no sanction, no naval blockade, no threat of force can fully neutralize. Meanwhile, a U.S. MQ-4C Triton surveillance drone, valued at over $200 million, one of the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering aircraft in the American arsenal, was conducting reconnaissance over the strait, monitoring IRGC vessel movements. At some point, it drifted too close to Iranian airspace. Emergency transponder code 7700 was activated, the universal aerial distress signal, and then silence. The signal disappeared. The IRGC confirmed the intercept. $200 million of American technology gone. The message was not subtle. As of this week, the IRGC has conducted more than 21 confirmed attacks on merchant shipping in the Persian Gulf. Iran continues exporting its own oil, approximately 2.1 million barrels per day, slightly above pre-war levels. through a combination of controlled strait access and the Gora-Jask pipeline, which bypasses the strait entirely. A pipeline no other Gulf state possesses. Iran mined the choke point that hurts everyone but itself. There is one more layer to this story that no financial desk is reporting with the seriousness it deserves. In the weeks surrounding each of Trump's major policy announcements on Iran, something happened in the futures markets that has triggered calls for congressional investigation. Suspicious bets totaling $580 million were placed on falling oil prices just 15 minutes before Trump published his statement postponing Iran strikes on March 23rd. A second series of trades worth $950 million was placed on April 7th, again minutes before a policy shift was announced. A third set of futures trades totaling $750 million was executed on April 17th, 20 minutes before another announcement. 3 separate events, 3 windows of minutes, 3 enormous coordinated bets, all placed just before information became public. Someone knew, and someone profited from the most consequential geopolitical decisions of our lifetime. This is not a war happening in a faraway region that has no connection to your life. This is a war being fought, in part, on the financial instruments that determine what you pay for fuel, for food, for the goods in every store near you. Here is where we stand tonight. And I want to be honest with you about what I see, because dishonest optimism is not analysis, it is performance. There are 2 paths. The first path, Pakistan, which has emerged as the most credible back-channel mediator between Washington and Tehran, confirmed by multiple outlets including regional reporting and the War Cost Conflict Timeline, holds this diplomatic thread open. Trump, facing the economic damage of prolonged strait closure bearing down on his approval ratings, accepts a face-saving framework. Iran, having already extracted enormous symbolic and material costs, a killed Supreme Leader, visible strain on the petrodollar system, a downed $200 million drone, accepts a pause. The strait stays open. Prices stabilize. The war goes cold before it goes nuclear. The condition for this path is that neither side does something in the next 72 hours that makes de-escalation impossible to sell domestically. That condition has already been violated twice this week. The second path is the spiral. Netanyahu, facing domestic criminal proceedings, facing the political impossibility of appearing weak, having helped architect this confrontation, escalates in Lebanon again. Hezbollah responds with something more precise and more painful than anything it has launched so far. Iran reads that as authorization to close the strait permanently this time and targets additional Gulf state infrastructure. The petrodollar recycling mechanism does not merely slow, it fractures. And global markets face a repricing event that makes 2008 look, in retrospect, like a correction. There is no visible middle ground right now, no active diplomatic channel between Washington and Tehran with genuine credibility on both sides, no intermediary trusted by both parties, no proposal on the table that either side can accept without surrendering what they have publicly defined as non-negotiable. Every party in this conflict is now fighting to avoid being the one that visibly lost, because in geopolitics, the appearance of strength sometimes matters more than strength itself. Netanyahu cannot retreat without dismantling his political narrative. Trump cannot retreat without publicly acknowledging that a war he promised would be resolved in 24 hours has instead destabilized the global economic order. And Iran's new leadership, the Revolutionary Guard, empowered to a degree not seen since the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, cannot yield ground without it being read inside Iran and outside as the beginning of collapse. Everyone trapped in their own trap, everyone watching the door, no one willing to be the first to walk through it toward anything resembling peace. An Iranian legislator named Ibrahim Azizi told reporters this week that if Israel does not understand what a ceasefire means, Iran will teach them with fire. In the context of a country that has closed the world's most critical maritime channel, mined it, selectively controlled access to it, and destroyed a $200 million surveillance aircraft, that statement is not theater. It has a destination and real consequences if the lesson is ignored. So I want to leave you with the questions I am sitting with tonight, because the answers matter more than any headline. Is Trump protecting Western security from a nuclear Iran? Or has he triggered the dismantling of the global financial order that underwrites Western prosperity? Is the Lebanon ceasefire a genuine pause? Or is it only the breathing space between the last 10-minute annihilation and the next one? When the dust settles, and it always does eventually, which country will emerge from this stronger? Which will emerge diminished? And who will history say lit the match? Leave your answer in the comments. Be specific. Be honest. I read everyone. This is Daily Brief. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell, because what is developing right now does not end with this video. This was one chapter. The next one is already being written, and you need to be in the room when it drops.